This is the paper on the buff security of the additional, I think you cannot see it, but okay, I will not use it, of the additional NIST candidates for the, on the signatures. And before I start, I want to thank my co-authors for the really nice collaboration. It was fun to work with them. So before I go into the details of the analysis or our results mostly, I want to recall what the buff notions are, the beyond unforgeability notions. And we have just seen that unforgeability is the standard assumption in the previous talk. And we want no one to be able to create signatures if they are not the owners of the secret key. But in practice, signatures can be used in very diverse ways. Like in modern times protocols, they can be used in ways which where unforgeability is not sufficient for security. And this is covered by the beyond unforgeability notions, which were introduced by Kass et al. In 2021. And there are three classes of beyond unforgeability notions: non-resignability, message-bound signatures, and exclusive ownership. Before I introduce those, I want to give an example how you can create a protocol where security may not depend, which uses signatures, but security does not depend on unforgeability. This is a identification protocol I made up. I'm not aware if it is used somewhere, if this already exists, this idea. Yeah, let me briefly explain it. We have the verifier and the prover who wants to identify to the verifier. They share a secret, which they might have shared before using some key encapsulation, for example, and the verifier has the list of used keys. The prover who wants to identify creates a key pair for the for some signature scheme and signs the shared secret and sends only the public key and the signature, and of course not the shared secret. The verifier checks if the signature is valid for this public key and the shared secret, and if the public key has not been used before. And if so, it accepts and writes this new public key onto the list. So this is only a vague idea of this ID protocol, and you need to ensure that it is secure. So the question is, what security assumption on the identification, on the signature scheme we would need to ensure security? And the idea is vaguely that adversary would need to sign an unknown message. This is exactly covered by the security notion of non-resignability here in a weak form, where the adversary has a public key and a signature for, again, this unknown message. And it's supposed to create a new public key and maybe a new signature, which may or may not be the same as the old one, which is valid for the unknown message. So here you see the adversary wins if the verification holds with the new public key and the signature for the unknown message, and the public key is really distinct. A bit of a history. The first, in the DR key protocol, Jackson et al. Found that the security does not depend on existential unforgeability, but the NR notion was introduced only later, or was formalized. We had auxiliary information back then, which we avoid in this current paper for reasons that Don et al. Found an error, mainly that this, in the way it was formalized, this is unachievable. But yeah, we use weaker version, but now there are even two further versions, which I think close this question on how to solve the issue with auxiliary information. Okay, now the second notion was message-bound signatures, where the adversary is supposed to produce a public key, two distinct messages and a signature, such that for both messages the verification holds, And this is clear why we don't want to have this for signatures, because an adversary can sign a message and later deny it by presenting another message for which the verification also holds. The last notion is exclusive ownership, here in the form of strong universal exclusive ownership, where the adversary gets a public key, message, and signature, and is supposed to find a distinct public key, a message, and the same signature. So it wins when if the verification holds with this new public key. Here, the message may or may not be changed. This depends essentially on the flavor of exclusive ownership, where we have the conservative version, the destructive version, and the malicious version, which we didn't cover in this work. There is a relation among them, mainly saying whether the message may or may not be changed. And we did the analysis for SEO and SDO here. So now you can ask, why should we care, or should we care about beyond unforgeability? And you could argue that signatures are not made for covering up these use cases in practice, but also we see that in practice they are used in these ways, and having buff security is a way to increase the security if someone uses protocols or creates protocols and doesn't do full security proof, then we have some more guarantees at least. And NIST acknowledges this and declares it as buff security as desirable features for this additional round. So how can we ensure that buff security holds? The best way is just, if you have a signature scheme, do an analysis. This has been done for the round 3 candidates in the initial buff paper and in our current work. And if this holds, then it's nice, we have no overhead. If it doesn't, then there is a transform which generically achieves buff security. Unfortunately, it comes with the overhead of requiring one hash computation, which may not be that something we have to worry about, but it also increases the signature size by 1 hash, which may be which maybe designers want to avoid. So there is also a third option that we can use other transforms, which may like I will present in a moment, one where you don't need to append this hash digest, and then because in general it fails to achieve buff, you need to redo the analysis. And this can be lighter than the buff transform. And maybe there can be more general results on buff security. You can ask me about this if you like to talk. The buff transform looks like this. It is really easy. You just hash the message and the public key and sign the hash digest instead of the message. And as the signature, you have the original signature and the hash. And this is checked during verification. So this has this overhead of requiring one more hash digest in the signature and the hash computation. Also of a longer message if you use something like the hash sign or hash sign paradigm. The lighter transform I was mentioning goes back to Ponon and Stern in 2005. And it's essentially the same idea, you just don't have this additional hash appended to the signature, and of course you cannot do the comparison. So it does not increase the signature size, but generically does not achieve buff as well. So you do need to do an analysis. So now we are at the stage to look into the NIST competition. So you all know this competition, which started almost a decade ago, and we are interested mostly in this additional signatures, 40 of which have been announced last year as candidates. This is the full list. We did the analysis for all these. So the those schemes that fall into the families of closed isogenies, lattices, and multivariate polynomials. Among those, some have been attacked. So this is the full list of the schemes that we have analyzed. Now I'm coming to the results. Here are the results for the code and isogeny-based schemes. And you can see that the results are do not really depend on the class of problem on which the scheme is based. For instance, cross achieves all the above notions, while wave, also a code-based scheme, does not achieve any. And you can also see that it may depend on the parameter set in the example of less and maths. Yeah, a similar picture is can be found for lattices, where we have squirrels, which does not achieve any of the above notions, and three of them achieve all. Unfortunately, the analysis for MBS and squirrels in their paper was not correct, and there was a comparison to Falcon, which achieves MBS security, but the comparison is not close enough, or the similarities are not close enough that squirrels achieves the same security. And for multivariate, the picture is very clear. You can see that all achieve MBS security, and except for PROV, none of them achieves any other notion. And I will explain it in the example of UOV, how we can attack non-resignability. And there is also an upside that the PS3 transform, which does not require the additional hash, suffices to achieve buff security for those. Okay, a few comments. Like there are some schemes which achieve buff security without doing an additional transform. For many, it suffices to use the PS3 transform. We have written this in the paper. We have disproved some claims. In particular, for example, blocks where they use part of the public key to define the target. So they hash part of the public key, but this is not sufficient for their security. Now, finally, one of the analysis, it's too much to cover all of them in one talk, but the example of UOV, these are the constants that we use. The public key looks like this is only not the very specific form, but more a generic version of UOV, where we have a public key, which is a set of homogeneous polynomials of degree 2. And the secret key is some trapdoor, which allows us to compute pre-images. A signature for a message looks like this, and vector S and the salt. And they satisfy this equation that pi applied to S gives us the hash of the message and the salt. So to sign, you need to find a pre-image of this hash value, which is exactly the idea of attacking non-resignability, where we have given a public key and a signature to an unknown message, as I explained at the beginning. And we are supposed to find a distinct public key and a new signature, which may even be the same, but here we will change it. So this needs to verify this unknown message. What can we do? Here we compute the target. And as we don't know the message, we cannot compute the term in the middle, but we can, as the verification holds for the initial given public key and signature, we can compute the right-hand side, and we know that this equality holds. So we define T as the value on the right. Then we just do a key jam, which gives us a new key, which is with huge probability a distinct one on the initial public key given. And we can just compute the pre-image using the trapdoor, and we return as the attack this new public key with this new S prime value. And we didn't change the salt, so we don't change the target here. So what can we say about buff security on multivariate schemes? The non-resignability attack is very generic. and can be applied to almost all schemes except for PROV. Exclusive ownership is more specific to the schemes, but can also be done for all of them except, again, PROV. And as I mentioned before, Vox uses some kind of transform. They use the hash of message salt and the part of the seed, or the seed of the public key, but the public key consists of more than the seed. And that's why it is not sufficient to, in their case at least, not sufficient to do this. So this does not suffice to achieve buff security. But yeah, as I mentioned before as well, it suffices for all multivariate schemes to use the PS3 transform, so they don't need to increase their signature size. With this, I want to finish, and yeah, maybe these three takeaways. Buff security is nice to have. Buff notions, if you want to do the analysis, you need to be careful, like in the case of existential unforgeability, for example, and loose comparison does not suffice to argue here. And yeah, we have singled out many schemes that can achieve buff security without this increase in signature size. So yeah, it's good to have this as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the great talk. Are there any questions?
Thank you for the lovely talk. I was wondering, you give in the example of MV the fact that this Poinon and Stern transform seems sufficient. Quite a high level question, but are there some indications of when this is sufficient? For example, in Hawk, which is the thing I know most about, we effectively do this and it's sufficient. But then for other lattice-based schemes, it's not. What are the properties we're looking out for?
Yeah, I think that was what I mentioned before as a maybe follow-up, what can be said here. One thing that I think is necessary is that MBS security is satisfied. So, for example, in Skurits, we found an attack, and it doesn't satisfy MBS security, and we can attack it even after this PS3 transform. And I'm very confident that it is because of this. I also have a follow-up work where we show that MBS security implies that after a PS3 transform, you achieve full buff security. Yeah, it's. I think that's the main part. We have a similar argument for Wave, for example, which doesn't satisfy MBS, and we can attack it even after the PS3 transform. And for all others, it was sufficient. So it seems that this is the key place to look into.
PS3 is both.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Okay, so let's thank Samad again. Thank you very much.